A new variation on an old scam is quickly becoming a favorite among scammers, and you'll want to know about it. So I'm Theo Joe, and I'll first explain how this scam works, and then I'll go over what I see as trends in general that you'll want to be able to watch out for going forward. This scam, which is being dubbed the Phantom Hacker Scam by the FBI, is actually kind of a combination of 3 previous hacker techniques. First, the classic tech support scam, then a bank support or impersonator scam, and government employee impersonator scam. The first stage of the scam is, again, like a classic tech support scam where the victim is told that they have a hacker on their computer or a virus, something like that. It could be anything. And the method of contact also varies wildly. It could be from a pop-up on a website, or a text message, or an email, or even an automated phone call. It could be anything. Usually they will include a phone number to call to fix this problem magically, and it'll typically impersonate a big company like Microsoft, being Windows support or whatever. Usually if the scammer contacts the victim personally, like through a text message or email, as opposed to just a pop-up that anyone could see, the scammers are going to look up information about each victim ahead of time, possibly, and then use that in the message. Like, for example, if they send a spam text message, they'll include the person's name who's actually the phone number recipient. And the same could be with an email. They include your name, anything that's really publicly available. Or if it is something untargeted like a pop-up, then the scammer will a lot of times quickly look up that phone number as the person calls in and then easily get that information to use anyway. Anyway, once the victim is on the phone, the scammer will instruct them to download some kind of remote access software onto their computer so that they can control the computer and then make some bogus virus scan that says, oh, you have a hacker in your computer, usually using some stupid command prompt command that is nonsense. Then in this particular scam, they'll have the victim go check on their bank accounts, which basically just involves them seeing which bank account they have that has the most money in it to target later. But here's where things change a little bit from the usual scam. Instead of trying to just get them to transfer the money right there on the phone, they'll instruct the victim to wait for a phone call from their bank's fraud department, and the first scammer, pretending to be the tech support, actually will end the call, and then the second person will take over later. And just so you're aware, one way they can trick victims into thinking that there is fraudulent activity on their bank account is when they're remoted into their computer, they'll black out the screen for a second and use any excuse for why that is, and then use inspect element to change a transaction, either removing money or adding money to say, look, we sent you this money, and stuff like that. So don't fall for that. In any case, after that comes phase 2, where they start to impersonate the bank. Now, like I said, a common way for scammers to get a bunch of personal info to use against you is from sketchy online data brokers that publicly list your personal details. But today I have a very relevant sponsor to help with that, which is Delete Me, a data privacy service to which I myself actually have been a paying customer for over 2 years now, long before they ever sponsored. If you ever have Googled yourself, you definitely have seen the countless so-called data broker websites who not only collect and display all your personal information, like name, address, and phone number, but even sell it to companies to do whatever they want with it. But that's where Delete Me comes in. They do all the work for you in submitting removal requests on your behalf. New data brokers pop up all the time, so Delete Me is constantly adding new ones and continue to monitor them and repeat removals if your info shows up on the site again, which can happen a lot. At the moment, they automatically scan 69 data brokers, and you'll get a privacy report for which sites you were removed from after 7 days and every 3 months after that. So you can see exactly which sites are clean and which ones have removals in progress. But you could also submit custom requests to remove any data from hundreds of other websites, even surprising ones like berkeley.edu, for example. I'm not even sure that's a data broker, but Delete Me will still help you get removed from it if you're on there for some reason. So if you want to get your personal information removed from the web and search results, go to joindeleteme.com/TheoJoe and use the promo code TheoJoe for a nice discount. And with all that being said, let's continue. So in phase 2, a different scammer will actually call the victim pretending to be from their bank, and they'll usually use a spoofed caller ID. So if the person does Google the phone number, they will see it as being on the bank's website. And I have heard calls where scammers literally say, Google the phone number that I'm calling from, and you'll see that it's from the bank, and people don't realize that's very easy to spoof. And also, I guess because it's a totally separate person calling now, it might make it seem more believable because it's not just one scammer, it's multiple. People might think that's less likely. At this point in the scammer will try to scare the victim, saying that there's a foreign hacker in your account, and to protect your funds, you need to transfer your money to a safe third-party account. And usually this will be like a foreign bank account or a bank account at the Federal Reserve, they'll say. Of course, it's just the scammer's overseas bank account. And of course, it'll be something irreversible like a wire transfer or a cryptocurrency thing. They may have them withdraw the funds and send it via cryptocurrency. And apparently, this may occur in smaller transactions over several weeks or months, apparently, so it'll raise less suspicion by the bank. Although I'm sure it's also very common for them to just send the whole thing. However, there is a third possible phase which involves a government employee impersonator, and apparently this one happens sometimes, like maybe if the victim starts to get a bit suspicious at the first two. With this, yet another scammer will call the victim and pretend to be from some government institution, again, like from the Federal Reserve, something like that, and effectively try to convince and confirm the stuff that the previous scammers already said. And I imagine that some scammers may choose to just replace altogether the bank employee scam with the government employee scam and just do that. Or maybe to increase their odds, they'll use this third phase even if the victim doesn't seem suspicious at first. Because I would have to assume that it might be easier to get victims to send money if it's the third person that finally asks them to send it. If the previous two people that they were talking to for help, they didn't ask for anything. They were just helping, and then the third person finally asks, so I mean, if they were going to scam me, they would have done it before. That kind of thinking, but of course, scammers apparently know to take advantage of that. According to the FBI, at this point, the scammer may also send an email with government letterhead that looks official, or apparently even a physical letter, they say, although I've never heard of that actually happening. But considering all this, it kind of builds into what I think is a upcoming trend on scams, which are scams that just get more and more convoluted over time, where they aren't very obvious what the scammer is trying to get out of you at first. In other words, what I mean is they'll kind of get you thinking, well, this is kind of weird, but I don't see what angle they would be getting at if they are scamming me. I don't see how they're going to get anything from me. And then they'll start from there, build your trust over time, and it might not even be obvious that you're being scammed. In fact, there is actually another type of scam I've made a video about in the past called pig butchering, where the scammer will meet someone either on a dating profile, social media, or just randomly text people and become their friend, and they won't even really try to get anything from the victim. They'll simply pretend to have some expensive, lavish lifestyle and send them pictures of stuff they're doing, or just post on a fake Instagram account, hoping that eventually the victim will ask the scammer, hey, how are you affording such expensive stuff? What do you do for work? Blah, blah, blah. And then the scammer will come in and say, oh, well, I trade cryptocurrency. I can teach you how. And they basically get you to sign up for a fake cryptocurrency website and literally steal any money you deposit and pretend that you're making money. And I'm sure many of you are thinking, oh, well, I would never fall for some kind of fake profile. But here's an example of a scammer that used an extremely clever technique that I bet not a lot of people realize is possible. So take a look at this. This is an actual scammer profile that I came across, someone fell victim to, and it of course steals photos from some influencer, and apparently this profile goes way back to 2018 with this person posting a lavish lifestyle. So it's not like it's a brand new account. They've been doing this for a while. But if you look closely, they actually used a feature on Facebook to backdate the pictures. And if you hover over this clock, you can see that all the pictures were added on the same day in May. If you go through them all added the same day. So if you weren't aware that you can backdate photos on Facebook, that's just one example, so don't think that you know everything. I would be very curious to know how many of you knew about that feature and would have been able to spot that. You can let me know down in the comments. But yeah, like I said, scams are just gonna get harder and harder to spot over time. Thanks again to Delete Me for sponsoring this video. And again, if you want your information removed from data brokers online, visit joindeleteme.com/TheoJoe and use the promo code TheoJoe for a nice discount. If you want to keep watching, the next video I'd recommend is about that pig butchering scam that I talked about. I go into way more details about other techniques they use. You can just click on that right there. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.